Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep on 1984 and, its impact. Really, its impact on everything we can think of, literature, film, daily life even.
Yeah,
You've given me some pretty interesting stuff to work with here, excerpts from the novel in
right.
English and Spanish, plus some analysis of its influences.
Right.
I think it's going to be really interesting to just unpack how relevant this dystopian classic remains.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing.
Today.
It really is how 1984 just set such a high bar for dystopian literature
Yeah.
that later authors just had to find all these creative ways to kind of explore those themes
Right.
without just echoing Orwell.
Yeah. And we have a really great example of that with Bernard Wolfe's Limbo.
Mm.
It was published in 1952, and it tackles this dystopian future, but with a really unique twist.
Yeah, imagine a world where social status is determined by voluntary amputation.
Oh, wow.
So the more limbs you amputate, the higher you climb socially.
Oh, my goodness.
Wolf calls this vol-amp, and it really makes you think about how societies can just warp our values.
That's a pretty extreme concept.
Yeah.
What do you think Wolfe was trying to say about conformity and how we value our bodies?
Right.
Especially,
Yeah.
In the context of a society that's run by supercomputers.
It's a fascinating question, and it's one that makes Limbo a really thought-provoking read.
Yeah.
Alongside 1984, both novels explore the dangers of unchecked power,
Right.
but they approach it from such different angles.
Speaking of unchecked power, one of the things that always strikes me about 1984 is just how unsettlingly familiar some of its themes feel. Like the whole idea of Emmanuel Goldstein
Right.
as this public enemy.
Right.
He's constantly denounced but seemingly irrelevant to the regime's actual power.
It's a classic tactic of totalitarian regimes.
Yeah.
Think about Leon Trotsky's role in Stalinist Russia. He was demonized as this traitor, even though his actual influence had waned considerably.
Right.
So it's about creating a boogeyman, right?
Yeah.
This unifying force of hatred that distracts people from the real mechanisms of control.
And it's a tactic that's still very much in play today,
Absolutely.
wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
We see it in politics, media, even social media.
Mm-hmm.
This constant need to create this us versus them mentality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By focusing on a common enemy, real or imagined,
Yeah.
those in power can manipulate public opinion
Right.
and justify actions that might otherwise be questioned. It's a powerful tool for maintaining control.
And, it's not just about creating enemies.
Yeah.
In 1984, the party manipulates language itself with newspeak,
Right.
which is this language designed to limit thought.
Mm-hmm.
And Syme, the character who's working on the new edition of the Newspeak Dictionary,
Yeah.
he actually seems excited about the prospect of making thought crime literally impossible.
There's this chilling passage where he predicts that in the future, people won't even be able to conceive of rebellious thoughts.
Wow.
Because the words to express them just won't exist.
It's like,
And it makes you wonder, right? How does controlling language impact our ability to think critically?
it really does. It makes you think about our own relationship with language today, with the rise of social media and, shortened attention spans. Are we losing some of those nuances,
Yeah.
those subtleties of meaning that allow for complex thought?
It's a question worth considering. I mean, in a world that's dominated by sound bites and algorithms,
Right.
it's more important than ever to be aware of how language is being used, both to inform and to manipulate.
Another way that the party exerts control is through the lottery. Right. It's like they dangle this illusion of hope in front of the proles, who are the working class, but it's all a carefully crafted illusion to keep them pacified.
And what's interesting is that the novel points out how the lack of communication between different parts of Oceania makes this manipulation possible.
Wow.
So people can't verify the claims about the lottery. So they just cling to this fantasy of a better life.
Right.
Do you see any parallels to how information is controlled and manipulated in our own world?
It's hard not to.
Right.
Especially when you think about how readily we accept information that we see online, often without questioning its source or its validity.
Right.
But control isn't just about information, is it?
No.
It's also about tapping into those primal emotions,
Right.
like the fear and hatred that we see directed at Goldstein during the 2 Minutes hate.
The party understands the power of those emotions
Yeah.
and how to channel them towards their own ends.
Right.
Orwell describes it as this collective frenzy, right? This cathartic release that sweeps everyone up in it, even Winston.
Yeah.
Who knows? It's all manufactured.
Speaking of Winston, one of the themes that really resonated with me is his fascination with the past. His desire to understand life before the party.
Right.
It's symbolized by his visits to Mr. Charrington's antique shop and his search for the full rhyme about the bills of St. Clement's.
Yeah, that yearning for a simpler time, right?
Yeah.
A connection to something that's authentic and genuine.
Right.
It's such a human impulse. And we see it, especially during times of uncertainty or upheaval.
Right.
But is that romanticized view of the past always accurate? Or are we simply filtering it through our present-day anxieties?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if we're ever truly able to escape the present, even when we're trying to connect with the past.
Right.
It seems like Winston's search for truth leads him down this dangerous path,
Right.
and his relationship with Julia becomes this act of rebellion
Absolutely.
against the party's control.
Their relationship challenges the party on this very personal level. They reclaim their individuality.
Yeah.
Their capacity for love and intimacy, things that the party has tried to eradicate. But we also see two different approaches to rebellion, don't we?
We do.
Winston is driven by this need to understand the why, while Julia is more focused on carving out this space of personal freedom.
Yeah, so do you think their contrasting approaches make one of them more successful at resisting the party's control?
Yeah.
Or are they both ultimately doomed from the start?
That's something we'll have to explore further as we delve deeper into their relationship and the events that unfold.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed so far.
Okay.
We've talked about how 1984 set this really high bar for dystopian literature,
Yeah.
forcing other authors like Bernard Woolf to find new ways to explore the dangers of unchecked power.
Right.
And we've seen how the themes of control and manipulation in the novel are still relevant today, from the creation of manufactured enemies to the manipulation of language and information.
Right. And we've started to unpack the complexities of Winston and Julia's relationship and how their individual approaches to rebellion highlight this tension between personal freedom and the fight for larger social change.
Yeah. And it's a tension I think we all experience in our own lives to some degree.
Stay tuned, everybody, as we continue our deep dive into 1984 and its enduring legacy.
Yeah, we'll be right back. So, let's look at some specific moments from the excerpts you provided that highlight these themes.
I'm still thinking about those contrasting approaches to rebellion we talked about.
Yeah.
How does that play out in the actual text?
Well, one striking example is how Winston and Julia experience the 2 minutes hate.
Okay.
Remember how Orwell describes Winston feeling that penosa mezcla de emociones? When Goldstein appears on the screen, there's this mix of revulsion, fear, and even this perverse attraction.
Right.
He's intellectually aware it's a sham.
Yeah.
But he can't fully escape the emotional manipulation.
It's interesting that you bring up the Spanish phrase there. It really emphasizes that blend of emotions, doesn't it?
It does.
And this is where seeing the novel in both languages really adds a layer for you as a listener.
You get a sense of Winston's internal conflict.
Right.
How he's struggling to maintain his individuality in the face of this just overwhelming wave of collective emotion.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with Julia.
Okay.
She's not buying any of it.
Right.
She sees the 2 minutes hate as this tedious performance.
Yeah.
And even uses it as an opportunity to daydream about rebelling against the party.
So she's engaging in this subtle form of resistance, even in the midst of this orchestrated display of hatred.
Yeah, it's almost like she's turning the party's own tools against them.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her rebellion is more about personal defiance.
Right.
Finding ways to just subvert the system from within. Remember how she tells Winston that she loves making a fool of the party? It's about finding those little cracks in the facade.
Right.
And exploiting them.
It seems like their contrasting approaches are also reflected in their views in the past.
Yeah.
Winston is drawn to the past, to those fragments of history that he hopes will validate his own feelings of rebellion.
Right.
He even buys that old diary.
Yes.
Which becomes the symbol of his desire to reclaim his own narrative.
And the simple act of writing down with Big Brother in that diary
Right.
is a huge risk.
Yeah.
It's an assertion of self that the party cannot tolerate.
Right.
And it's fascinating how Orwell describes the physicality of the act. You know, the feel of the pen on the creamy paper.
Oh, wow.
It emphasizes Winston's desire to connect with something real, something tangible in this world of controlled narratives.
But Julia seems less interested in the past.
Right.
She's more focused on the present, on finding moments of pleasure and connection.
Yeah. She tells Winston that she doesn't care about the past. That what mattered was that we should get on with the job of getting hate, fear, and distrust out of our systems. It's a very pragmatic approach.
It is.
She's not trying to change the system,
Right.
but to find ways to live authentically within it.
Their differing views on the past seem to highlight this broader question of how we engage with history.
Exactly.
Is it about seeking validation, as Winston seems to be doing?
Right.
Or is it about learning from the past so that we can build a better future?
That's a question each generation has to grapple with.
It is.
And 1984 provides no easy answers.
One scene that really stuck with me is Winston's encounter with the Parsons children.
Oh, yeah.
They're playing these war games dressed as spies, accusing Winston of thought crime.
Right.
And it's just this chilling reminder of how effectively the party indoctrinates even the youngest members of society.
It highlights the insidiousness of propaganda and how it can warp our perceptions from a very early age.
Right.
Those children aren't just playing games. They're internalizing the party's values, its language, its entire worldview.
You know, do you think that kind of indoctrination is limited to totalitarian regimes?
Right.
Or do we see echoes of it in our own societies?
That's a thought-provoking question.
It is.
We certainly see how media and technology can be used to shape opinions and behaviors, even from a young age.
Right.
It makes you wonder about the line between education and indoctrination.
It really does.
Another chilling moment is the scene in the canteen, where Syme, who's working on the Newspeak Dictionary, explains the goal of the language. Wow. He says that eventually every concept that can ever be needed will be expressed by exactly one word, with all its subsidiary meanings rubbed out and forgotten.
Wow. So. It's terrifying to think about a world where language is reduced to its most basic functional level.
Right.
What does that do to our ability to think critically?
Right.
To express complex ideas.
Exactly.
To even understand the world around us.
And remember, this is more than just a simplification of language. It's about controlling thought itself.
Right.
If you limit the words people can use, you limit their ability to conceive of alternative ideas or challenge the status quo.
It's interesting to think about that in the context of our own world.
Yeah.
You know, we often talk about political correctness or the dangers of cancel culture.
Right.
Are those examples of language being used to control thought?
Right.
Even if the intentions might be different.
It's a debate worth having.
Yeah.
How do we balance the need for respectful language with the importance of open dialogue and the free exchange of ideas?
Yeah.
That's a question 1984 forces us to confront.
And then there's the party's control of history.
Yes.
You know, they literally rewrite the past to suit their present-day agenda.
Right.
It's like Winston says, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
It raises the question, how do we know what's true when history is constantly being rewritten?
Right. What are the consequences of losing that shared understanding of the past?
It makes you wonder if we're all susceptible to this kind of manipulation.
Right.
Even when we think we're being critical and discerning.
Absolutely. It highlights the importance of media literacy, of being able to critically evaluate the information that we're bombarded with on a daily basis.
Another scene that illustrates this control of information is the proles arguing over the lottery results.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're completely absorbed in it.
Yeah.
Oblivious to the larger political reality.
The lottery is such a brilliant tool of control.
It is.
It offers this glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
A distraction from the drudgery of their lives.
Right.
But it's also a way to keep them isolated, to prevent them from forming any kind of collective identity.
Right.
Or challenging the status quo.
It's like they're living in this bubble of manufactured reality.
Right.
And the party controls the narrative.
Yeah.
You know, do we ever fall into similar traps?
Allowing ourselves to be distracted by entertainment or consumerism.
Right.
Rather than engaging with the bigger issues facing our world.
It's certainly something to think about.
It is.
You know, how do we stay informed and engaged without becoming overwhelmed by the constant barrage of information.
Right.
Much of which is designed to manipulate or distract us.
And then there's Winston's encounter with the old man in the pub.
Yeah.
He's desperately seeking some connection to the past, some validation of his own memories. But the old man's memories are fragmented, unreliable. He can't even remember the details of his own life, let alone the political realities of the past.
It's a poignant reminder of how easily history can be erased, not just by totalitarian regimes, but by the passage of time and the fallibility of human memory.
And even the rhyme about the bells of St. Clement's, which Winston sees as this symbol of a lost world of beauty and tradition, is incomplete. He can only remember fragments of it.
It suggests that even our personal memories, the things that we hold dear and believe to be true, can be distorted or manipulated. How can we trust our own memories when they're so easily influenced by external forces?
It's a pretty unsettling thought.
It is.
But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's move on to Winston and Julie's relationship. And how it challenges the party's control.
Yeah. That's where we see some of the most powerful examples of both personal rebellion and the party's terrifying methods of crushing dissent.
So we were just discussing how the party manipulates information and, even personal memories. Winston and Julia's relationship seems like such a direct challenge to that control.
Absolutely. Their relationship is just this powerful act of rebellion. A reclaiming of those very things the party seeks to eradicate. Love, intimacy, individual desire. Remember that scene where they first make love in the clearing in the woods? Julia throws aside her anti-sex league sash. And it's like she's shedding the party's control right there in that moment.
What strikes you about that?
Well, the imagery is so powerful. It's not just a physical act. It's this symbolic rejection of the party's attempt to regulate, even their emotions.
And they create their own little sanctuary in that room above Mr. Tarrington's shop. They bring in real coffee, a beautiful old bed, things that represent a world outside the party's grasp.
And it makes you think, what are those things that we seek out even today to create that sense of personal space and freedom?
And for Winston, it's also about connecting with the past. Like with that glass paperweight that he buys from Mr. Charrington.
That paperweight becomes such a symbol of this lost world, a world before the party, before Big Brother. But it's so fragile, easily shattered. Do you think that fragility is symbolic of Winston's hopes as well?
It's kind of this heartbreaking foreshadowing of what's to come.
Their
secret world, their love, it's all built on this foundation that's ultimately controlled by the party.
And that betrayal, when they're arrested in the room above the shop, it's devastating.
It is.
It turns out Mr. Charrington, the kindly old man, is a member of the thought police.
It's like this reminder that no one can be trusted. That the party's surveillance is all-encompassing.
Then we're taken into the depths of the Ministry of Love. And the torture begins. And Orwell doesn't shy away from the brutality of it all.
He doesn't.
This is where we see the party's true power, not just in the physical torture, but in the psychological manipulation. Remember, O'Brien tells Winston, power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing.
That line is so chilling. It's about more than just breaking a person's body. It's about completely erasing their individuality, their sense of self.
And what's striking is that O'Brien delivers these pronouncements with this kind of cold intellectual detachment. He truly believes the party's methods are justified.
It raises the question, how do seemingly rational people become complicit in such atrocities? Is it a matter of ideology, or is it something more basic like a desire for power?
Those are questions that we still grapple with today.
We do.
When we see authoritarian regimes and the people who support them.
And in the end, Winston is completely broken.
He is.
He betrays, Julia embraces the party's version of reality, and even comes to love Big Brother.
It's such a tragic ending, but it's also this powerful warning. If we allow ourselves to be manipulated, to surrender our critical thinking and our capacity for independent thought, we risk becoming like Winston numb and accepting of a world where truth has no meaning.
And we're left with that final image of Winston sitting in the Chestnut Tree Cafe.
Right.
Drinking gin, his memories rewritten, his spirit crushed.
It's bleak, but it serves as this reminder that we must constantly be vigilant, questioning the information we're given, challenging those in power, fighting to preserve our own individuality and capacity for critical thought.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
1984 may be a work of fiction.
Right.
But its themes resonate so deeply with our world today.
Absolutely. And that's the power of great literature, isn't it?
It is.
To make us think,
Yeah.
to challenge our assumptions, and to remind us that the fight for freedom, for truth, for our very humanity is an ongoing one.
Well, thank you for joining us on this journey into the world of 1984.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
We hope it sparked some thoughts and questions that will stay with you long after this deep dive is over.